in Pennsylvania. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna, Tiffany Mataji, Dandavat Pranam, Srila Prabhupada ki jai, Guru Maharaj ki jai. Thank you, Mataji, for joining and giving your association. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna, Vinita Gandharvika Mataji. Oh, boy, Srila Prabhupada and Guru Maharajis. My humble obeisances to you and all the devotees. This is Krishna Kumari Devdasi from Nanda.
Hare Krishna, Krishna Kumari Mataji, Dandavat Pranam, Srila Prabhupada ki jai, Guru Maharaj ki jai. Thank you, Mataji, for joining and giving your association. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna, Vinita Gandharvika Mataji, Dandot Pranam, Srila Prabhupada ki jai, Guru Maharaj ki jai. This is Shama Gauri Dasi from Charlotte.
Hare Krishna, Shama Gauri Mataji, Dandavat Pranam, Srila Prabhupada ki jai, Guru Maharaj ki jai. Thank you, Mataji, for joining and giving your association. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna. Is there anybody who would like to introduce themselves?
Hare Krishna, Vinita Gandharvika Mataji. This is Kamalita Dasi from Baltimore. Please accept my humble obeisances. All goes to Guru Maharaj, Prabhupada and all the devotees. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna, Gomati ki Mataji, Dandavat Pranam, Srila Prabhupada ki jai, Guru Maharaj ki jai. Thank you, Mataji, for joining and giving your association. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna. Thank you, Mataji.
Hare Krishna Mataji, Dandavat Pranam. All glories to Srila Prabhupada, all glories to Gurudev and all glories to assembled devotees. This is Radha from Baltimore.
Hare Krishna, Radha Mataji, Dandavat Pranam, Srila Prabhupada ki jai, Guru Maharaj ki jai. Thank you, Mataji, for joining and giving your association. Hare Krishna. Is there anybody who would like to introduce themselves?
Hare Krishna, Vedita Gandharvika Mataji. Please accept my humble obeisances. All Guru Srila Prabhupada. This is Vrinda from Baltimore.
Hare Krishna, Vrinda Mataji, Dandavat Pranam, Srila Prabhupada ki jai, Guru Maharaj ki jai. Thank you, Mataji, for joining and giving your association. Hare Krishna. Is there anybody who would like to introduce themselves? Hare Krishna. I welcome everyone to Bhakti Sangha Japa conference call. Today we are very fortunate to have His Grace Chaitanya Lila Prabhuji to enlighten us on topic Srimad Bhagavatam 4th canto 29th chapter 54th verse onwards. Hare Krishna Prabhuji, please accept my humble obeisances. Srila Prabhupada ki jai, Guru Maharaj ki jai. Thank you Prabhuji for joining and giving your valuable time and association this morning. Please take over the call Prabhu. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna, thank you very much, Mataji, for your introduction. I'm really feeling grateful for having received this opportunity to serve all the devotees this morning. Today we'll be reading from the Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 4, Chapter 29, verse 54. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Reading from Canto 4, Chapter 29, chapter entitled The Creation of the Fourth Order, text 54. Sumanah samas dharmanam strinam sharana ashrame Pushpa madhu gandhavat kshudratamam kamya karma vipakajam Kama sukhalavam jahi vai pathyadi vichinvantam mituni bhuyatad abhiniveshita manasam sadangri ganasama geetavad ati manohara vanitadi janalapsya iti karam ati pralobhita karanam Agre vrika yutavad atmana ayur harato ho ratran tan kalalava visheshan aviganya triheshu viharantam prishtata eva paroksham anupravritto lubdhaka kritantontah charenayam iha paravidyati tam imam atmanam Ahorajan bhinna hridayam drashtum arhati. It's a bit long Sanskrit verse. Translation and purport by His Divine Grace Srila Prabhupada. Translation. My dear king, woman who is very attractive in the beginning, but in the end very disturbing, is exactly like the flower which is attractive in the beginning and detestable at the end. With woman, the living entity is entangled with lusty desires and he enjoys sex just as one enjoys the aroma of a flower. He thus enjoys a life of sense gratification from his tongue to his genitals, and in this way, the living entity considers himself very happy in family life. United with his wife, he always remains absorbed in such thoughts. He feels great pleasure in hearing the talks of his wife and children, which are like the sweet humming of bumblebees that collect honey from flower to flower. He forgets that before him is time, which is taking away his lifespan with the passing of day and night. He does not see the gradual diminishing of his life, nor does he care about the superintendent of death who is trying to kill him from behind. Just try to understand this. You are in a precarious position and are threatened from all sides. So forth. Materialistic life means forgetting one's constitutional position as the eternal servant of Krishna. And this forgetfulness is especially enhanced in the Grihastha ashram. In the Grihastha ashram, a young man accepts a young wife who is very beautiful in the beginning, but in due course of time, after giving birth to so many children and becoming older and older, she demands many things from the husband to maintain the entire family. At such a time, the wife becomes detestable to the very man who accepted her in her younger days. One becomes attached to the Grihastha ashram for two reasons only. The wife cooks palatable dishes for the satisfaction of her husband's tongue, and she gives him sexual pleasure at night. A person attached to the Grihastha ashram is always thinking of these two things, palatable food and sex enjoyment. The talks of the wife, which are enjoyed as a family recreation, and the talks of the children both attract the living entity. He thus forgets that he has to die someday and has to prepare for the next life. He wants to be put into a congenial body. The deer in the flower garden is an allegory used by the great sage Narada to point out to the king that the king himself is similarly entrapped by such surroundings. Actually, everyone is surrounded by such a family life which misleads one. The living entity thus forgets that he has to return home back to Godhead. He simply becomes entangled in family life. Prahlad Maharaj has therefore hinted, Hitvatma patam griham andakupam vanam gato yad dharam ashrayeta. Family life is considered a blind well, andakupam, into which a person falls and dies without help. Prahlad Maharaj recommends that while one's senses are there and one is strong enough, he should abandon the Grihastha ashram and take shelter of the lotus feet of the Lord, going to the forest of Vrindavan. According to Vedic civilization, one has to give up family life at a certain age, at the age of 50, take vanaprastha, and eventually remain alone as a sannyasi. That is the prescribed method of Vedic civilization known as Varnashram Dharma. When one takes sannyas after enjoying family life, he pleases the Supreme Lord Vishnu. One has to understand one's position in family or worldly life. That is called intelligence. One should not remain always entrapped in family life to satisfy his tongue and genitals in association with a wife. In such a way, one simply spoils his life. According to Vedic civilization, it is imperative to give up the family at a certain stage, if by force if necessary. Unfortunately, so-called followers of Vedic life do not give up their family even at the end of life, unless they are forced by death. There should be a thorough overhauling of the social system, and the society should revert to the Vedic principles, that is, the four varnas and the four ashramas. A pretty long translation and purport. ओमज्ञानतिमिरन्धस्य ज्ञानाञ्जनशलाकया चक्षुरुन्मीलितं येन तस्मै श्रीगुरवे नमः। श्रीचैतन्यमनोभीष्टं स्थापितं येन भूतले स्वयं रूप कदा मह्यं ददाति स्वपदान्तिकम्। वन्देऽहं श्रीगुरोः श्रीयुतापदकमलं श्रीगुरून् वैष्णवांश्च श्रीरूपं साग्रजातं सहगणा रघुनाथान्वितं तं सजीवं साद्वैतं सावधूतं परिजनासहितं श्रीकृष्णचैतन्यदेवं श्रीराधा कृष्णपादान् सहगणा ललिता श्रीविशाखान्वितांश्च हे कृष्णा करुणा सिन्धु दीनबन्धो जगत्पते गोपेश गोपिकान्त राधाकान्त नमोऽस्तुते तप्त काञ्चन गौराङ्गी राधे वृन्दावनेश्वरी वृषभानुसुते देवी प्रणमामि हरिप्रिये। जय श्री कृष्ण चैतन्य प्रभु नित्यानंद, श्री अद्वैत गदाधर श्रीवासदि गौर भक्तवृंद। हरे कृष्णा 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 हरे हरे, हरे राम 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 हरे हरे। Hare Krishna. So we are reading from this section of the Srimad Bhagavatam, the conversation that's happening between Narad Muni and King Prachini Parikshit. And we have read in the previous verses how Narad Muni has just finished giving the allegorical example, narrating the story of Puranjan. And thereafter, Narad Muni explained to King Prachini Bharishad the futility of the karma kanda mentality and the glorification of the process of devotional service. And in this particular section, we are reading how Narad Muni is describing the allegorical story of the deer to the king. And we find that in going through all these narrations and speaking to the king, Narad Muni is kind of expediting the desire of the king, expediting the king's renunciation. And in this particular verse, Narad Muni is kind of sensing that King Prachini Parishad may try to postpone, his decision till his sons, the Prachetas, they return back from their tapasya, so that he could hand over the kingdom to the Prachetas, to his sons, and then take renunciation. But then here, Narad Muni is repeatedly emphasizing through the allegorical story of a deer to hasten Prachini Parikshit's exit from the kingdom. And Narad Muni is mentioning here that you should now search out for that deer who is neglecting the tiger in front of him and the hunter behind him, and is engrossed in eating the grass with his mate and enjoying the sweet singing of the bees. And once again, King Prachini Bharishat may start to wonder, who is this deer? What does this mean? Where do I search for such a deer? And this particular verse, Narad Muni is pointing head on. He's very much direct with the king, and he's mentioning that that deer is none other than you, and it is you whose desire to enjoy the senses of tongue and genitals is like the deer who is enjoying the grass along with his mate. And your desire to enjoy the sweet gossip of women is like the deer who is enjoying the sweet singing of the bees. But then, King, you're failing to notice that the tiger of time is in front of you and the hunter of death is right behind you and they're awaiting you. So when we look at these descriptions and when we go through these verses, if we take these verses on the face value, it may appear to be very alarming or very pretty much direct. But then if we look at the intent, if we look at the explanation, the desire of Narad Muni, we find that great personalities like Narad Muni, they very earnestly and very constantly they're endeavoring to pull the living entities, to pull us, all of us, from the comfortable cocoon of our enjoying mentality in this material world. And this sincere and the earnest endeavor of the great acharyas, the earnest endeavor on the part of the shastras, is what is being reflected in this particular verse to pull us out from that enjoying mentality in this material world. Most of us have had that experience that during the winter season, it's very difficult to give up during the early morning when we want to get up. It's so difficult to part with the quilt or the blanket and pull us out from the warmth of the quilt. It's pretty much difficult. Nevertheless, we do it. Why do we do it? Because we know there is work that needs to be done, and there are pitfalls of just continuing inside the coil, just continuing in the warmth of the blanket. And therefore, no matter how cozy, no matter how comfortable that particular situation is, we do pull ourselves out of that particular comfortable situation, because we understand that there are higher responsibilities which we need to cater to. And if we don't cater to those responsibilities, there are going to be pitfalls. And therefore, a similar kind of a situation we find here, how Narad Muni is trying to re-emphasize, how Narad Muni is trying to, persuade the king to pull himself out of the current atmosphere that he is in. I'd like to share an experience from my school days. In my school days, it used to be very, in the beginning of every academic year, whenever I used to go to the school, it would be a very amusing sight to look at the nursery class, because in that nursery class there would be all these small little toddlers who would have taken admission, and they would be crying all day, and the teachers would be struggling hard to keep them pacified and just to stop them from crying. And it used to be a cacophony the whole day. I mean, all the kids in the first day of their school, they would be crying. Of course, we had a good time, and the kids, they might be thinking that coming to school was such a bad thing. We were so happy back at home. We used to play all day long, and we used to be there under the shelter and care of the elders. But then the parents, they know very well that it's not the comfortable situation at home that is congenial for a bright future of the child. And therefore, the parents, knowing what is beneficial for the child, they deliberately they pull out the child from that comfortable situation of home and put them under the care of a teacher, put them under the care of an institution where they can learn things and where they can hone themselves up, so that they have a very bright future in the years to come. Similarly, we find, the channels of the spiritual master, guru, sadhus, the acharyas, and the shastras, the scriptures. They also constantly want to pull us out from our comfortable situation. And they know very well what is beneficial for us. And therefore, there are these repeated reminders from the Guru, Sadhu, and Shastras. There are these repeated encouragements, and there are these repeated alerts that are present in the Shastras. And going through all these purports and these translations, we may feel that yeah, I mean, definitely I know that now. Now that all of us have embarked on the process of devotional service, we know that sense gratification is bad. We know that the process of Krishna consciousness is just perfect, and we know that what is supposed to be done to perfect our lives. But then the question that is worth asking here is that, if we know all of these things, why is it that these kind of quote unquote the heavy verses are present in the Srimad Bhagavatam? Srimad Bhagavatam is considered as the Amala Purana. Srimad Bhagavatam is considered is actually meant for Nirmatsaranam Satam, people who are pure of purified of envy and Nirmatsara. Why is it that such quote unquote, once again, the heavy verses, the heavy narrations are being spoken in the Srimad Bhagavatam? That goes to show that there is still something for us to learn. Yes, we may know that self gratification is bad. We may have embarked on the path of Krishna consciousness, the perfect path. But looks like, reading these verses, hearing directly from Narad Muni, definitely there is a need for us as well for periodic pauses in our busy lifestyle and pondering upon three things. What is my position in my journey of self-discovery? This is exactly Narad Muni is trying to emphasize upon King Prachini Bharishat, to take an inventory, to take a stock of his position on the eternal time scale. And therefore, Narad Muni is propelling the king, is persuading, encouraging the king to pause and ponder what is his position on his path of spiritual development. Similarly, reading these verses, we understand that we too need to periodically pause in our heavy and in our busy lifestyles and ask ourselves, am I growing on this path or am I just stagnant? Am I reflecting on my realizations? We should be reflecting on our realizations, the quality of the dealings that we have with others, and how much is the degree of the shelter that we are actually taking in the holy name. So that is our position, trying to take an inventory of our position. The second thing that Narad Muni is trying to uh, hint hint at ourselves, to ask ourselves is, what is my pace on this journey of self-discovery? Is it enough? Because typically the mind says that whatever the pace is, it is just enough. But the point is, what may seem enough may not be actually enough. And therefore, the second thing that we need to ask ourselves is, along with what is my position in this path of, on this journey of my self-discovery, my journey of spiritual advancement, what is my pace on this path of spiritual advancement? And the third is, what are my problems on my path of spiritual advancement? Yes, problems are definitely there, but the question was asking here is, are we all aware of our problems and are we actually doing something about them? So, and we see here that the current conversation between Narad Muni and Kachini Barishar, Narad Muni is trying to help the king understand that, my dear king, your position is not safe. You are surrounded by so much of opulence and so much of facilities for material sense enjoyment, which is not at all congenial for your spiritual development. The second thing Narad Muni is trying to emphasize upon the king is, my dear king, your pace is not enough. You are accustomed to all these ritualistic performances of karmakandic sacrifices, which ultimately will not award you any spiritual benefit. They may fetch you a destination in the heavenly planets, but then once again, you are within the 14 planetary systems, and therefore you must endeavor in a manner. Your pace should be in such a manner that you ultimately get out of this material existence into the eternal service of the Supreme Lord. And the third thing that Narad Muni is trying to hint at the king is, my dear king, your problems are not being attended to. You are unable to see the tiger of death that is in front of you and the hunter of time that is chasing you from behind. And therefore, when we hear these encouragements, when we hear these triggering questions of great personalities like Narad Muni, it behooves us to also try to figure out, how do we rise from our current scenario? How do we rise in our Krishna consciousness? How do we improve our position on our path of Krishna consciousness? How do we increase our pace? And how do we identify and cater to our problems? So in our discussion today, we'll just have a look at these 4 steps that we could follow, which will help us to actually rise from our current situation, which will help us increase our pace, and which will help us identify our problems. So just like these allegorical stories by Narad Muni, the story of the King Puranjan and the story of this particular deer, they are help to mend the king think and act. So similarly, these stories from Srimad Bhagavatam, we are reading the story of Dhruv Maharaj, we are reading the story of the discussion between King Kachini Barishat and Narad Muni. These stories are actually meant for us to think and act upon us. So the question for us here is, how do we pull ourselves from this, comfortable cocoon that we may be in? Not just being in the Krishna consciousness movement, but rising in our Krishna consciousness. because we have come in this beautiful sangha of devotees. We have been introduced to this beautiful process of Krishna consciousness, and therefore we understand that there is a goal that we all need to, attend to. There is a particular destination. There is a particular objective that is, meant for us to achieve in life. So I'll be discussing 4 steps that how can we actually do certain things so that we not just remain in Krishna consciousness, but we definitely rise in Krishna consciousness. So I've just acronymed this as RISE. How do we rise in Krishna consciousness? So the R in this acronym RISE stands for recognizing our comfortable cocoon. Just like the larva inside the cocoon has a very cozy atmosphere, and it just doesn't want to come out, but then definitely it realizes that there is a bright future that lies in store for it, and therefore it just rubs across the cocoon and comes out as a beautiful butterfly. So when we talk about recognizing this cocoon, we find that what to talk of recognizing our comfortable cocoon. When we look at the propaganda all around us, it is just like, just enjoy life. Get this new phone, get this new car, get this new house, get this new, taste this new food, or, have this new fashion. And if you just do this, life will be, fun. And just enjoy. There is this sale, that offer, these benefits, so much of, benefits that are being promised by the outside world. But then in doing so, the propaganda is just forget the problem that lies ahead of you. Just like the ostrich, when an ostrich is chased, the ostrich just digs up the ground and puts its mouth inside, thinking that the problem is over. But then we understand that just by ignoring the problem doesn't go. Just like when the Twin Towers were attacked in New York, in the United States of America, the president of the United States, in his first television address, what was his message to the entire people of America, the citizens of America? The message was, go shopping. That was the message of the president. That don't focus on what calamity we have just faced. Go shopping, enjoy life, purchase this, get that, and whatever keeps you happy, just fetch those sources of enjoyment and be happy. And when we talk about our own mind, the mind just convinces us, even as devotees, that our current position is perfectly okay. There is no need to work any harder. Our current pace is just okay. And absolutely everything is going on fine. But then there is this beautiful saying which says that real vision means to see the invisible, feel the intangible, and achieve the impossible. And therefore, it is important for us to recognize our comfort cocoon and wanting to shed it away and fly as a beautiful butterfly in the sky of devotional service, the sky, beautiful sky of bhakti. If we just remain inside the cocoon, we'll be bereft of all those experiences that lie in store for us, which Krishna is very much eager to award to us if we just shed that comfortable cocoon and come out and fly like a beautiful butterfly in the sky of bhakti. And therefore, coming back to this particular purport, Narad Muni is explaining, and giving very direct uh, instructions to King Prajini Barishad. And the thing is, the details in the life of the king might be different from that of ours. We may not be in the position of a ruler of a kingdom, or surrounded by so much of opulence. But looking at the principle, we understand that we also need to question that, is there anything that is making us complacent? Are we aware of our anchors that are still holding us to the shores of material enjoyment? And are we willing to pull those anchors, remove that winter quilt, and get out of the home just like the nursery kids, we need to question ourselves that, what are those anchors which are still holding me back? What are those things that are still, keeping me, keeping my pace or my position stagnant? In the Srimad Bhagavatam, the second canto, third chapter, 10th verse, there is this beautiful verse says, Akama sarva kamo va moksha kama udaradhi tivrena bhakti yogena yajeta purusha param. Akama sarva kamo va. Whether one is filled with all kinds of materialistic desire or whether one is completely free of any material desire. Akama sarva kamo va moksha kama udaradhi. Or whether we have the desire for getting material liberation, liberation from the material world. Moksha kama udaradhi. What is intended for us? What is that duty that we are supposed to do? And Sukhdev Goswami is again in very precise, very precisely is using very important word here. He's saying Tivrena Bhakti Yogena. Now, Tivrena, Srila Prabhupada translates that word Tivrena as with great force. Just like, when a dam just breaks, the force by which the water flows, that force has the power to just, sway away all the villages that come in its way. So similarly, all different anarthas inside our hearts, they have set up their own villages. And the process of Krishna consciousness or the instruction of the super soul, they are like being held as a dam. But when the process of Krishna consciousness is done with great force, that dam of anarthas, that dam of complacency breaks, and by the force of bhakti, all these anarthas that are lying within the heart, they are just swayed away, just like the waters, they just sway away and just completely finish off any of those villages. So similarly, we need to understand that it's not just by any pace that we're going to see success. It's not just by moving at any speed things are going to manifest before us. We are going to get Krishna conscious realizations before us. Many years back, we were having this celebration of the Janmashtami festival at one of the centers in Mumbai, not the main temple, but one of the local Janmashtami festivals we were having. And we were expecting a kind of turn up of say around 1,000 people. And we were into preparing halwa prasad and khichdi for all of these visitors who would turn up in the Janmashtami program that very evening. And we had been endeavoring for quite some time to have this khichdi. I mean, for 1,000 people cooking this khichdi, but somehow it was looking like things are not turning up until someone very much experienced came and said that, my dear boys, the kind of flame that you have, it's never going to be, you're never going to see the light of the day. And therefore, in order for this khichdi to be cooked in the required amount of time, the kind of flame that's going to be, that's required to be underneath is really, it should be really of a very strong nature. And that's when we kind of made all these arrangements, and we had this very forceful fire underneath, and that is how the khichdi actually got cooked. And similarly, if we can just meditate on this example, if we have to experience that taste of bhakti, and we are having all the ingredients that are required for us to bring forth that taste. But if the endeavor, which is like the flame underneath, if the endeavor is like that of a candle, I mean, just imagine wanting to cook a khichdi for 1,000 people, keeping a candle underneath. Is there any possibility that will achieve success? Maybe not. And therefore, we need to understand that similarly, in order for us to actually experience the taste of bhakti, in order for us to actually have those realizations of Krishna consciousness, which are promised by the great acharyas, which are explained in the scriptures, you know, the flame that's required is really strong. And therefore, this particular, the very first step that we are discussing today is recognizing our comfortable situation. This is the stage of acceptance. This is the stage when we accept that, yes, my position needs to be improved. This is the stage when we accept that my pace needs to be increased. And this is the step, the recognizing our comfortable cocoon. This is the step where we understand that our problems needs to be identified and they need to be attended to. So once we accept, then we move on to the next step. Once we recognize our comfortable situation, once we recognize, just like the king is able to recognize his situation by the instructions of Narad Muni. Similarly, when we look around ourselves and when we take an inventory of our position, our pace, and our problems, we understand that yes, there is task that needs to be done. And that is when we move on to the next stage and we identify the opportunity. So we're discussing the acronym RISE. The first R denotes the recognizing our comfortable situation, recognizing our comfortable cocoon. The I in the acronym RISE refers to identifying the opportunity for improvement that is before us. Yes, there is no one in this world who is bereft of problems. Everyone has their own set of problems. And we all will be having problems no matter who we are, no matter where we are, and no matter how advanced we are. Yes, even advanced devotees, take the example of the Pandavas, the example of Draupadi, example of Prahlad, Gajendra, all of these advanced souls, all of these stories in Srimad Bhagavatam are of personalities who had problems in their lives. And the difference is that they identified the opportunity amidst the problem. What was that opportunity to take shelter of the Supreme Lord? And they actually took that shelter with all their hearts. We'll reflect on the example of Gajendra for some time. Now, the episode of the Gajendra Moksha Lila is explained in the 8th canto of Srimad Bhagavatam, the 2nd chapter. And there is this beautiful verse, this 32nd verse, which explains the or which gives us a glimpse of the heart of Gajendra. How he is identifying that opportunity amidst his problem. So Gajendra is saying, Naman ime gyataya aturam gaja kutah karinya prabhavanti mochitum grahena pashena vidatur avrito apyaham chatam yami paramparayanam. And Gajendra is saying, the other elephants, who are my friends and relatives, could not rescue me from this danger. What then to speak of my wives? They cannot do anything. It is by the will of providence that I have been attacked by the crocodile. And therefore, now here is the important identification. Therefore, I shall seek shelter of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, who is always the shelter of everyone, even of great personalities. And Srila Prabhupada, in this particular purport, he writes a beautiful sentence. Let us read that sentence. He says, we may struggle for existence as far as our intelligence allows. Just like a bird can fly to the extent of the strength of its wings. Depending on the strength of the wings, the bird can fly that higher. So similarly, Prabhupada is mentioning we may struggle for existence as far as our intelligence may allow us. And we may try to take care of ourselves. Yes, we may endeavor and we may struggle to take care of ourselves. But Srila Prabhupada says, unless the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Krishna, ultimately saves us from danger, our attempts will be useless. Now, this same opportunity is available to each of us. It is just a matter of identifying those opportunities so that by taking benefit, by encashing these opportunities, we gradually are able to come out of our comfortable situation. So what are these opportunities that we need to identify? There's this beautiful quote which says that many times opportunities knock at the door and we complain of the noise. So similarly, as devotees, as practicing sadhakas, all of us have that opportunity to chant more, to hear more, to associate more, to learn more, to serve more, and to fix our minds upon Krishna more and more. And that is what is going to open the doors to more Krishna conscious realizations. Now, the catch here, the thing that we need to do is just to convince the mind. Mind you, we don't need to perform any Herculean task. All of this is very, very simple. The process of Krishna consciousness is very simple, but the hindrance is from the mind. And therefore, identifying the opportunity is the responsibility of the mind. It is not a matter of time management. Many times people, say that, I already have so much of tight schedule and, I just don't have time. But it's not a matter of time management. It's a matter of mind management, because we need to do the same thing but with all our attention and with all our hearts, not allowing the mind and the external distractions to steal our attention from our practice of Krishna consciousness. And therefore, when we talk about identifying this opportunity, there is a need for us to converse with the mind, negotiate with the mind, explaining all that we have heard, explaining all that we have read from the Shastras. When we convince the mind about the importance of taking shelter in a more stronger manner, of taking shelter in a more attentive manner, that is when we actually encash those opportunities that are lying in front of us. So yes, once we recognize our comfortable situations, once we accept the problem that is there, just like the problem might be different in the case of the king, but the problems in our own particular scenario, in each and every one of us, the set of problems might be different, but the solution is very much the same. And therefore, the solution here is in the form of the opportunity to hear and associate by the devotees in a more stronger manner, to take shelter of the process of Krishna consciousness in a more stronger manner, in a more attentive manner. And therefore, yes, the first thing is understanding the problem. The second is about the solution. The third is about the application of the solution. So we discussed recognizing our comfortable situation, identifying the opportunity, and then the important step is the application, which is scaling up our practice gradually. We need to scale up gradually. We just can't be where we are, because it is said that if we just keep doing what we have been doing, we'll keep getting what we have been getting. And therefore, getting out of this entire entanglement of material existence is no joke. In the 15th chapter, Krishna explains, Narupam asyeha tathopa labhyate, namto na cha adir, na cha sampratishtha, ashwatthamenam suvirudha moolam, asanga shastrena dridhena chitva. So Krishna is saying, Narupam asyeha, this material existence, the way things might unfold in our lives, may not have a definite form. Narupamasi tathopalabhyate. Nanto na cha adir. It has no beginning, it has no end. Naja sampratishtha. Ashwatthamenam suviruda moolam. The roots of this material existence are just very deep. And to uproot this entire tree that is there, to get out of this material existence is no joke. And therefore, we understand that there is a lot that needs to be done on our part, and there is a need for us to scale up our practice in a gradual but in a definite manner. And we look at the example of Dhruva, how a 5-year-old Dhruva, he scaled up. Of course, the descriptions are really, very mind-blowing in that sense. Bhagavatam describes, the fourth canto describes, the earlier in this particular canto, it is mentioned that for the first month, Dhruva Maharaj ate only fruits and berries on every third day. In the second month, Dhruva Maharaj ate only every 6 days, and for his eatables, he took dry grass and leaves. In the third month, he drank water only every 9 days. In the fourth month, he inhaled air only after 12th days, every 12th day. And by the fifth month, Maharaj Dhruv, the son of the king, had controlled his breathing so perfectly that he was able to stand on only one leg, just as a column stands without motion, and concentrate his mind fully on the Parabrahman. Of course, when we read all these descriptions, we might say that, of course, are you meaning to say that, we should be reaching that stage? It's a good joke. Appears to be a good joke, Prabhu. It's good to hear, but to implement, just impossible. That is what, honestly, each of us, for none of us, it might be possible to implement or to just imitate these practices of Dhruv Maharaj. But then, what does it imply in our own personal lives? It implies that figuring out what is possible in our scenario, what is possible for us, Dhruv Maharaj might have scaled up in a different manner, in a different scenario, at a different pace. But then, what is it possible? What is possible for us in the current time, place, and circumstances, in the current situation that each of us may be in? But then, if we say that nothing is possible, that might not be, just. And therefore, yes, we need to figure out how is it that we can also scale up gradually. Yes, we may need help, that is accepted. But then, just like we discussed, that giving up this material existence is no joke unless and until we actually scale up the quality of our practice. And like we were mentioning, that this practice of Krishna consciousness is no rocket science. The things that we need to do is not something, bombastic, is not something, really out of the world. The process is very much simple. But how we apply that science, how we practice that science is what matters in the end. There's this beautiful saying which says, great men, they don't do different things, but they do things differently, which is what makes them great. And therefore, yes, when we look at the examples all over the world, we find that all those people who have risen in their lives, whether they be students, whether they be artists, whether they be athletes, sports people, or businessmen, all who have risen, they have repeatedly put in that incremental endeavor to improve the quality of their practice. Yes, this requires guidance from those who are successful in each of these corresponding fields. Similarly, the same thing holds true even for spiritual practitioners. Just like these, all these successful people, all these people who have risen, the students, the professional people, the artists, the sports people, all those who have risen, they made that incremental endeavor in their practice to improve the quality of their practice, and they sought guidance from the successful people in their fields. So similarly, as spiritual practitioners, as devotional enthusiasts, there is a need for us to put in that incremental endeavor at every point of time to ensure that the quality of our Krishna conscious practice is enhanced over a period of time. Slowly, might be slow, but then definitely. And therefore, here Narad Muni is giving a stepwise guidance to the king, King Prachini Barishat, how to exactly do. That is the next verse which will be discussed tomorrow. But the exact steps are being discussed by Narad Muni. So yes, the point is the details might vary. Dhruva, and we saw the example of Dhruva, and here King Prachini Barishat, they are being advised to leave home and go to the forest. That is a detail. But the principle is that how do they improve their process? How do they improve their practice of taking shelter of Krishna? And this principle is very, very beautifully enunciated, very beautifully presented by Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu in the Chaitanya Charitamrita. No, I'm sorry, is very beautifully presented by Srila Bhakti Vinod Thakur, who sings, Grihe thako, vane thako, sada hari bole dako, sukhe dukhe bhulo nako, vadane harinam korore. So here, Srila Bhakti Vinod Thakur is explaining that it is not the details that we need to implement in our lives. It is not the same thing what Dhruva did. It is not the same thing what is being prescribed for King Prachini Bharisha that we also need to implement in our lives. No, we need to look at the principle. And what is that principle? The principle is whether one is at home or is in the forest. Grihe thako, vane thako. The principle is that how do we endeavor that we reach to a position that we are also constantly remembering Krishna. Sada Hari Bole Dako. Whether in happiness or in distress, Sukhe Dukhe Bhule Nako. We don't forget Krishna. Vadane Harinam Korore. And this is what the Acharyas are also explaining. So yes, there is a need for us to recognize our comfortable situation, because unless and until we accept that there is work to be done, we might not even endeavor. So yes, recognizing the comfortable situation, identifying the opportunities that are before us, the opportunities for associating, the opportunities for hearing, learning, and serving more and more, and then finally scaling up our practice. And the last but not the least is when we do these three things, when we recognize the situation, when we recognize our cocoon, when we identify the opportunities before us, and when we scale ourselves gradually, that is when we actually experience the delight that follows. So this is the final step, or the prayojan. How is it that we will be benefiting? What is the result of putting in that devotional endeavor, that additional endeavor? And it is said that by passing a magnet over the iron filings, all these iron filings, they automatically they align themselves. So similarly, if we actually put in that additional endeavor and we scale the quality of our practice in a gradual manner, we will find that yes, our determination to practice Krishna consciousness, that also gets aligned. Our decision making capabilities, the way we see the world, the way we look at the events in the world, the way we deal with the people of this world, that everything gets aligned automatically just by having this powerful magnet of Krishna consciousness properly in place. So therefore, yes, if we want to experience that delight, which is explained in the Shastras, which is described by the Acharyas, the proof of the pudding is in its eating, they say. I'll end with a beautiful section of purport from the third chapter of the Bhagavad Gita. This is the 41st verse, and Srila Prabhupada gives a very hope-giving purport, a very beautiful line here. And Srila Prabhupada is saying that Krishna consciousness is so powerful that even a late beginner can become a lover of God by following the regulated principles of devotional service. This is Bhagavad Gita 3.41. Krishna consciousness is so powerful that even a late beginner can become a lover of God by following the regulated principles of devotional service. Now, please hear very carefully. The next line is very important. He says, so from any stage of life, or from the time of understanding its urgency, one can begin regulating the senses in Krishna consciousness, devotional service of the Lord, and turn the lust into love of Godhead, the highest perfectional stage of human life. And when we do so, that is when we actually experience that delight of Krishna consciousness. So yes, I'll just summarize what we discussed for the past some time. We discussed a need for us to periodically pause and ponder over what is my position on my journey of self-discovery, what is my pace on this journey, and am I aware of my problems and attending to those problems, or the problems are just lingering on for years together and nothing is being done about them. So yes, definitely we may need help. Are we seeking that help? Are we identifying that opportunity? And then we discuss that how there is a need for us to rise from our current quality of Krishna conscious practice, recognizing our comfortable cocoon, recognizing our comfortable situation, then identifying the situation, the opportunity, identifying the opportunity before us, scaling up gradually to improve the quality of our practice, and finally experiencing the delight. That is when we actually find ourselves improving and being blessed by the mercy of Krishna with the passage of time. I'll end with a beautiful composition by a very famous poet, is Robert Frost. So Robert Frost, in one of his compilations, he says, he ends his poem with these beautiful words. And he says, the woods are lovely, dark and deep, but there are promises to keep. But I have promises to keep and miles to go before I sleep. Miles to go before I sleep. So Robert Frost is saying that, yes, so similarly in our situation, yes, the situation around us might be very lovely. The glitter and glamour of the material world might be really enticing. And there is no second thoughts about that. The woods are lovely, dark and deep, very promising. But then we understand that, but I have promises to keep. You know, there is an accountability as spiritual practitioners to for our spiritual master towards Srila Prabhupada and towards the Supreme Lord Sri Krishna, towards Srimati Radharani. There are these promises. Therefore, but I have promises to keep and miles to go before I sleep, miles to go before I sleep. There is a lot that still needs to be done with respect to my spiritual progress. And with those words, I'll end up here. Thank you all once again for being here today and allowing me to share some of my thoughts on this particular section of the Srimad Bhagavatam. Jai Granth Srimad Bhagavat Mahapuran ki Jai. His Divine Grace, Srila Prabhupada ki Jai. Actually, I'm a little pressed with time, but maybe I'll take just one question. If that is okay, maybe we can have just one question. I have something else following up.
Thank you, Prabhuji, for such a beautiful class. As you don't have time, only one question. Please, devotees, go ahead and ask the question. Hare Krishna. If anybody have a question.
Hare Krishna, Prabhuji, Dandavat Pranam. My name is Sharanagata and I have a question that you were mentioning about progress and then, how the steps. So when we took some of the services, thinking to please Krishna, if there are a lot of obstacles or something or the other is every day happening, should we be stopping that, saying that maybe Krishna is not accepting that services, or should be doing it more forcefully and it is for our own purification? I mean, there are two ways to look at it. So I would like to know your opinion about it. Haribol.
Thank you for the beautiful question, Mataji. As far as I can think, is a lot depends on the exact details of what that particular service is, and what are the nature of obstacles that are there. And therefore, in my understanding, based on our knowledge of Krishna consciousness, if we are able to figure out what needs to be done, well and good. But somehow or the other, if we are not able to figure out, maybe we need guidance. Maybe we need the experience of someone who might be experienced in that particular situation, who might have gone through that situation. Because it is said in Krishna consciousness, I mean, we don't go through a lonely path. Whatever obstacles we face or whatever challenges, difficulties in whether it is about adjusting our time schedules, or whether actually thing needs to be changed. Maybe we may need some guidance from someone more experienced. But to conclude, the bottom line we may figure out is that, as regards, there are these two, just like you mentioned, there are these two options before us, whether to keep struggling and whether to ensure that, yes, I do ensure that I become successful, or I just give it up and maybe just take something else. So maybe we can have one criteria here in place, that if my service is for the benefit of the other Vaishnavas, if there are other devotees who are actually benefiting from my service, then my understanding is that we should give it a good fight. We should definitely ensure that our service to devotees is not hampered. And on the other hand, if it is something that is just pertaining to us, if it is like a personal thing and a personal desire, and not so much to do with benefiting the devotees at large, and we are actually facing a lot of problem on that front, maybe we can consider making some changes and uh, resorting to some other service or something. But definitely a lot depends on the exact situation, and if done with guidance of someone who knows the exact situation, I think we'll be able to make a better decision in that regard. I hope that addresses maybe to a
Yeah,
certain extent.
thank you so much, Prabhuji. Yes, that helped a lot. The sentence that you said, that is it for the benefit of other Vaishnavas too, that's struck to me, that like, yes, it's very, very nice. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Madhu.
Krishna.
I'm sorry I won't be able to take any more questions today, because there's something else lined up for me. And I would like to thank all of you once again for giving me this opportunity to serve all of you. Jai Granth
Hare
Srimad
Krishna,
Bhagavatam
Prabhuji.
ki jai.
Hare
Thank
Krishna,
you,
Prabhuji.
Prabhuji.
Thank you
Thank you,
so much,
Prabhuji.
Prabhuji, for coming and giving your
Hare
classes.
Krishna, Prabhuji. Thank you so much.
Yeah, even though you have busy schedule, you came. So thank you so much.
Thank you.
Hare
Thank
Krishna.
you.
I would like to
Hare
offer
Krishna.
Prabhuji,
Thank
thank
you
you
very
so
much,
much.
Prabhu.
Dandvat pranam.
Prabhu,
Vancha kalpatarubhyasya
Jai Bhavani
Nanda Koti Vaishnav Vrinda ki jai, Shri
Ki
Jai
Jai.
Is
Ki
Chaitanya
Jai.
Leela Prabhuji ki jai.
Ki Jai.